Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I'm your host, Nithya Subramanian, editor at ISAS, and with me is His Excellency Mr. Jawed Ashraf, the Indian High Commissioner to Singapore. Today, he will be talking about the impact of the current COVID-19 situation on Indian nationals in Singapore and the support provided by the Indian High Commission here. He will also be sharing with us how his office is working with the Singapore government agencies.
Thank you for joining us, Your Excellency.
I'd just like to start off by asking you about the COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has left a lot of Indians stranded in Singapore. So could you tell us a little bit about the support being provided by the Indian High Commission in Singapore and the steps being taken to help them go home?
Nithya, thank you. Thank you for arranging this conversation. I hope everyone in ISAS and those who are going to be listening in are safe and keeping well. And I hope this isn't the only shape of the future when we see each other virtually. And we hope life returns to normal very soon. But so thank you once again. And it's a great pleasure to be here. But of course, for us here in Singapore, as in India and the rest of the world, the situation is quite extraordinary and unprecedented. Perhaps the most cliched word being used today. But nevertheless, it is something that none of us had imagined. And it was just 8 weeks ago, really, when things began to take a really downward turn. Now, for us, let's begin really around the time that in India we started suspending international flights and also prohibiting return of all passengers, including Indians, from abroad from certain set of countries. And this is just before the lockdown began on the 24th night in India. So our first task really was that we had about 125 Indians who were returning from the Philippines and Malaysia and who were stranded at Changi Airport around the 22nd and the 23rd of March. So they were really prohibited from entering India because they were coming from Philippines and Malaysia, two countries on that prohibited list. So it took a great deal of effort for us to get those stranded passengers into India. We had to seek special permission from the government. And for 2 days, we had several officers and staff at the Changi Airport looking after them, really helping them with food and other conveniences and generally trying to calm things down. And since then, of course, we anticipated that there's going to be a large number of stranded Indians over here. So we opened first thing was communication. So we've opened 3 helplines which work all the times. Our mission, the High Commission, continues to be staffed by officers and some skeletal staff, and we are constantly on email and on phones talking to people. We have set up a web page for where people can register with their names, their details, their occupation, type of visa, and so on and so forth, and their destination in India. So currently we have approximately 3,000 people, Indian nationals who have registered with us. And we are in constant touch with them also on social media, for example, if you check. We are taking care of, first of all, is the need to extend their visas or otherwise other kinds of stay permits, which will enable them to continue to be here. We've been in touch with Singapore government. They've been very helpful in that regard. The second, of course, is we've been providing accommodation to a large number of them, stranded Indians, food, and in many cases, medical support also by way of medicines or referral to doctors here. Now, the kinds of people we have here who are stranded, of course, are short-term visitors. They could be tourists, business travelers, and many who were here on family visits. For example, parents who visit their children. They are stranded. We've got a large number of students who've either finished their courses or are unable to continue to sustain themselves here or have to do it online. We've got a large number of people who've been laid off, employment pass holders and their families. We've got a large number of work pass and S pass holders who've been laid off and who want to return to India. So we've got about 3,000 people who've registered with us. And so wherever they've needed, particularly for students, we've had to make arrangements, and for stranded tourists for accommodation and food. We've two kinds of arrangements. We are arranged with a number of restaurants over here to deliver food to their places of residence because it's difficult for people to move around in these times after the circuit breaker was introduced here in particular. But we've also, there are students who live in groups, and they've asked for dry rations. So we've made arrangements for dry ration to be delivered to them. There are people here who were on short visits, but who ran out of medicines for chronic illnesses, diabetes, hypertension, and so on and so forth. We made arrangements for their medicines to be brought from India, but we've also made arrangements with doctors over here who can prescribe medicines to them, and we help them get them over here. A large number of students complain of depression, isolation, uncertainty, anxiety. So while we also speak to them and to their parents to reassure them that things in Singapore aren't as dire as it might appear from the aggregate numbers, that we are there 24 hours to look after them. We've also appointed 2 counselors, trained professional counselors. They are available to speak to the students. That is something which is proving also to be very helpful to them. We've also tried to connect many local diaspora organizations to those who want to help, but largely we've relied on our resources so far to provide these kinds of assistance. We've had some very tragic situations too. We've had 9 deaths of Indians over here, not necessarily from COVID, from accident, from someone, but there were people from India who were here for treatment who passed away. So we've had to arrange for their funeral, last rites, burial or cremation, as the case may be. Singapore government was quite helpful and supportive in granting permissions relatively quickly. And so this has gone off well. So this is, as far as those who are stranded here are concerned. And we continue to talk to government in India to see when and how we can start the repatriation process. This is a decision that the government will have to take, taking into account the entire global perspective, because we've got citizens who are stranded in almost every part of the world, and there are extremely large numbers we have in the Gulf region, for example. So we'll have to take all of that into account as we plan on the process of repatriation of Indians. But till then, we are here to look after them, and that's in whatever way they require it. There are, of course, the other set of issues as workers, and we can talk about that.
Yes, I was coming to that. So the workers are a very big group, again, who are affected here in Singapore. So how are you working with the Singapore government, collaborating with them to help this group of people?
Well, to start with, let me say this, that, I'd say Singapore government has been very aggressive and proactive in addressing the issues arising out of the spiraling number of cases in the dormitories, and also in workers who live outside the dormitories, though, of course, in the latter case, the number is pretty small. I think in terms of both trying to contain the spread and treat those who are sick, we've taken all possible measures, but also the corollary, which is to look after the welfare of the workers who are here. Clearly, this is a period when there is no work. It's a lockdown situation over here as far as work is concerned. So as Prime Minister Lee has repeatedly said that Singapore will treat foreign workers as Singapore would treat its own citizens, and we deeply appreciate it. This is also what Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi conveyed to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong when they spoke on phone early this week, and they. So we are quite confident about the way Singapore government is looking after the workers. For example, they've all been assured of that they will get their full salaries, that they'll get 3 meals a day, full medical support. They've even been given Wi-Fi and conveniences like masks and sanitizers, and they are, in a sense, the separation process of those who are healthy, those who've been tested. So in some sense, the numbers have also risen very sharply because of with the aggressive manner in which the government has gone about testing the workers. And it was necessary because they live in large numbers in densely populated dormitories. So it was very important that the government did that, and they have. We have been in touch with them. We do not wish to work independently of the government. I mean, I think our job really is to support the efforts and the commendable efforts that Singapore government is making to look after the workers, both and to treat those who are sick and and those who are healthy to look after them. So our job is, of course, we are in constant communication with the workers in the sense that, I'm working with MOM really, because, I've been there with Minister S. Ishwaran and Senior Minister of State Mohammed Zaki. My councillor colleagues have been to dorms as well. I sent out a video message which was dubbed in Tamil for the workers, and then a Tamil New Year's greetings. We're working with Singapore government to get some of the icons of Indian cinema and cricket really to send messages of reassurance and comfort to the workers. We are also, I have to say that the sense of compassion that is prevalent in Singapore society has come to the fore again as far as the workers are concerned. And we see a large number of organizations and many individuals who've come forward to support them. And in variety of ways. I mean, there are those who are helping them with Indian food, which they're used to. Those workers who got laid off and are at a sense of loss, people have reached out to them with financial support. I've seen, for example, Abdul Kalam Society, the Knowledge Society, which has started by Ambassador K. Safani over here a couple of years ago, collect money for one of the deceased workers to send it to their to his family in India. Then there are those who have come forward with innovative tools, platforms. For example, there is a platform called KNOW, K-N-O-W, which some of the dorm managers are using. That's a great way of communicating with workers and for workers to communicate with each other inside dorms, for content to be delivered to them, for messages to be conveyed in several languages, which is possible on that platform. And this they have given away free to dorm managers. We also sent it out to Ministry of Manpower to see if they needed to use it, and they are very grateful for it. We see platforms like DEI. There is a platform where they have curated a nice convenience package for 15 Singapore dollars to be given to foreign workers, and it's just the right things that they need, and people are donating to DEI in order to support this, and they have reached out to a large number of workers. Lisha, is hundreds of thousands of people who are being supported, particularly those who are observing fasting during the month of Ramzan. Lisha is providing food for them. There is Global India International School and its foundation, Global Indian Foundation, that is donated a large sum of money, working through Citizens Consultative Committee, as also through other organizations. And then there are people who are using their creative talents. And there's this young lady, Sunena Gupta, who studies in Berkeley but is here. She's a Kathak dancer. And she's curating Kathak performances every Sunday, 7 to 8 p.m. as a tribute to the workers. She called it Shukran, which means thank you. And also an opportunity for those who are watching it. It's on YouTube, 7 to 8 p.m. on Sundays through the month of May to donate some money. So, people are coming forward, and our task is to see if we can help mobilize them. And whenever workers have reached out to us directly, as they have, especially those who are not living in dorms, and there are quite a few of them who've either lost jobs or fallen into difficult times over here because of lack of work, we are supporting them directly in terms of accommodation as well as food, and if they require any other kind of assistance, if it's medical in nature, and so forth. So yes, I mean, government, us and the community, we're all rallying together, and this is where you see the spirit of Singapore coming forth and reaching out to help each other.
It was also recently reported that a large quantity, about 78 tons of cargo went from Singapore to India as part of its PPE acquisition. So how else is Singapore contributing to India's fight against the coronavirus?
Well, first of all, let me just be a little clear on that 78 tons. I mean, this is only being sourced through a Singapore-based company. I mean, these are, since Singapore has a large number of trading companies, and, this is a process in which we have reached out to international trading firms in a number of countries. So it's a Singapore-based company, which is also sourcing it from different places in the world. And in a sense, the mission is working with them and with our headquarters to coordinate those supplies. So it isn't really as though it's going from Singapore or from as Singapore supports. But yes, Singapore has supported India in a way that, Temasek Foundation has donated test kits for 70,000 tests these are these Fortitude 2.0 tests, which has been developed by A-Star. They're very good quality tests, and the 70,000 tests have been sent over the past in 2 installments. In addition, another 30,000 tests have been sent through Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. So in total, one can say that there have been kits for conducting 100,000 tests made by A-Star that have gone to India, 70,000 supported by Temasek Foundation and 30,000 by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I think we are, of course, very grateful to Singapore for hosting and looking after the Indian migrant workers who are here and who face an uncertain time during this period. We've also been working with Singapore in the reverse side to support the needs over here. For example, there were a large quantity of medical supplies which Singapore had wanted from India and which had subsequently got frozen because of export ban of those medical items. These are really about 5 million masks and about raw material to make masks over here running into multiple times of 5 million, and also hand sanitizers. So again, about 1.4 million bottles of 500 milliliters each. Now, these were all now banned items, but we have just given permission for release of these and export these items and their export to Singapore. Again, Singapore had also requested for a supply of 2.5 million tablets of hydroxychloroquine. As you know, this is in great demand around the world so we have just given approval for export of 2.5 million tablets of hydroxychloroquine to Singapore. In addition, we are working together to ensure that the supply lines remain, especially for critical food items. For example, India is a major source of rice for Singapore. We are working closely with MTI and with agencies in India to ensure that despite these lockdown conditions in India that have disrupted the supply chains, we facilitate the exports, and actually that's now begun to work well. We have also, yesterday, in fact, we had a video conference day before yesterday on other aspects also, including fruits and vegetables and how we can ensure smooth supply lines between countries. So yes, I mean, this is the time when we're both coming together to help each other, to address each other's needs in ways that two friends should.
So this is a pandemic that has brought the two countries closer, we could say that, and both are working with each other in close connection.
Yes, I mean, we do. And, Prime Minister, and as I said, our two Prime Ministers spoke, and it was a very warm conversation. They've agreed to work together, not just during the pandemic, but in the post-pandemic situation. I think there are a number of areas which we can work together. Of course, currently our minds are focused on dealing with the pandemic and the economic and social consequences of the pandemic. But I think this is also a time to look ahead to the future and see the lessons we can draw from this situation and what we've experienced, both for ourselves and the world. And we're two countries where we are fortunate that our relationship is just filled with a lot of goodwill, a lot of mutual respect and confidence in each other. I think one relationship which is free from contests and claims, no doubts and hesitations with each other. So the only thing we have to do is to really look ahead to continue to build this relationship and take this to a higher level. And I think the post-pandemic situation will present with us a lot of opportunities. One, for example, I think we both recognize that there will be, as the supply chains adjust, as each country looks at diversification and increasing resilience, we see enormous trading opportunities there. And we're already thinking of the ways in which we can support each other, develop make our economies more resilient, and both in terms of internally and in terms of our external trade. But also, I think there'll be great opportunities for investment as we both rebuild and re-energize our economies. I think one area which has come to the fore, which has been a great priority for our two countries in the last 3 years, is digitalization. And as now we can see that, whether it is in terms of something as simple as remittance for workers from dormitories, or the way we work towards payment systems and digitalize them, digital governance, and there are so many areas. Now, India has done extremely well with its digital governance model based on Aadhaar platforms. Singapore is developing its Smart Nation, and we've done extremely well in terms of pioneering some new ideas in our fintech cooperation, and particularly in financial inclusion and digitalization of payments. So this is again an area where we can work together, not just for ourselves, but offer solutions to this region and to the rest of the world. So again, I mean, this is one important area where our two prime ministers would like to focus on. But going forward, I mean, I think we have an important responsibility for the region and for the world. So one very important thing would be what lessons we draw from it. And I think retreating into ourselves is not an option. So we have to make sure that trade, investment, travel, technologies, etc., continue to flow across the borders. We have to be sure that, while globalization will face a lot of headwinds, that we don't start erecting walls against each other, and we ensure that the international economy remains fundamentally open, even as countries build more resilience into their own economies. Then I think there is a very, coordination in multilateral forums, G20 in particular, because, as in 2008, 2009 crisis, it will be a huge responsibility for those who work in G20 or part of G20 to coordinate monetary and fiscal policies to ensure that there is and also coordinate the opening up of international travel in a way that we can reinforce the growth impulses and recovery impulses in the economy. Similarly, debt relief and relief for the poorer countries and the weaker sections of society is going to be an important responsibility for world leaders as far as the economic situation goes. We'll have to repurpose in a sense globalization also, not just in terms of trade and investment, but see how we can work together more on health, education, livelihoods, a greater degree of inclusion in the world. I think we'll have to work towards reforming multilateralism. We've seen in this grave crisis that multilateralism fell short. Multilateral institutions, including WHO, fell short. So how do we make multilateral institutions stronger, more responsive, more inclusive, give a voice to the weak? And how do we prepare ourselves for future pandemic and disasters so that there is a concerted global response, unlike what we have seen in the current situation? And remember, it's not the first pandemic or epidemic we've had since the turn of the century. SARS is still fresh in memories. But it just shows that the world wasn't quite prepared for it in terms of a pandemic response or a disaster response. So we'll have to see how we can work towards it. Climate change is, again, an important area we need to focus on. And we've just seen how quickly nature recovers and heals itself at a time of when we have stopped doing many things. Now, we had assumed that it is impossible to change lifestyles. So we only sought solutions in terms of technology or policies or targets. But Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi had spoken about this even in 2014 in his maiden address to UNGA. The change in lifestyle will be an important aspect also. The cleanest energy is the energy not consumed. So if you look at that, this gives us important lessons that yes, it is possible for us to change the course and avoid the slow death like that we are breached. It's not as dramatic as pandemic, but it is a slow death that we're bringing upon ourselves through climate change and destruction of nature. That's again an area, and as you know, Prime Minister had spearheaded this initiative on International Solar Alliance. We hope Singapore would also join it in the near future. And then, of course, geopolitics. I mean, this is not going to be a world which is going to be kinder to each other. I mean, you've already seen the first signs of geopolitical competition. There's a degree of bitterness, greater sense of combativeness. And I expect that competition will certainly be stronger and harsher. The West itself has taken a big blow out of this pandemic and will obviously want to respond to that as well. Without going into the merits of competing claims about this and who's going to lose, who's going to win, one form of governance is better than the other, one form of economic model better than the other. But we're entering we'll enter a somewhat difficult and troubled waters in terms of geopolitics. Now, how do we, particularly in this region, avoid a downward spiral and its worst consequences? I mean, this is going to be an important responsibility that all of us share. And Singapore and India have great meeting of minds on this issue, particularly in Indo-Pacific region, the need to avoid the region being torn apart in great power rivalry, and for us to find common grounds to work towards a more stable and cooperative order. This is, again, something which we will work with Singapore and with ASEAN and some of the other partners in the region. So yes, there's a good agenda, a long agenda for us, and I think we both draw the right lessons for it and work for each other. And the more we do for each other, the more we'll be able to do for the region as well. So.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this interview. We were very grateful that you took time off your schedule and talked to us.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Great pleasure.
Dear listeners, we hope you have enjoyed this session. If you're interested to learn more about our analysis and work, please visit our website isis.nus.edu.sg.